Hello, I'm Charlotte, this is Charids, but before we get going, I want to talk about my new YouTube channel, Studio Astrid. It's a DIY channel for someone suffering with chronic illness and disability, and I'm trying to make it my new career, so if you could check that out and support it, I really appreciate it. Also, tiny pup date, this is Pippin. She is a 7-month-old miniature schnauzer and a newer addition to the family, so we still have Huxley, he's wandering around the house somewhere, but I thought I'd show you the fresh, fluffy one. For background, I had 3 shots of the Pfizer COVID vaccination, and then I caught COVID for the first time in January 2022 and experienced long COVID symptoms from that, but I got a lot worse on my second infection in June 2022, and I've been at a similar level since then. I've made a few videos on this channel talking about my experiences with long COVID. The last one was filmed January last year, so it's been kind of 16 months, and I have a lot to update you on. Firstly, in October last year, I got diagnosed with ME/CFS and POTS. ME/CFS is chronic fatigue syndrome, and POTS stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and it basically means that your body doesn't react well to being vertical. In combination with ME/CFS, it basically presents as a compulsion to be as horizontal as possible all of the time. If I stand up, my heart rate spikes, it stays higher for much longer than it should. In this video, I'm going to be talking through all of my symptoms, all the treatments I've tried, and just generally how life is going. I'm going to be referring a lot to the Action for ME's functional ability scale, which I will pop up on screen now. All of the symptoms in there just like really align with my experience, and I think it's a useful metric to use. So around when I filmed my last video, start of last year, I'd say I averaged around a 50%, and I'm now up to like a 60-70%, which is really exciting, and I'll share more about why I think that is. 70% probably sounds really good, like I'm basically doing fine. What that actually means is that in an average month, I might have 1 week where I can work consistently half days. I will never do more than like 4 hours work in a day because I know that it exhausts me. So that's either work on the computer or driving to my workshop and doing a few hours woodworking. I might have 1 week a month where I could do that like consistently every day. I'll also have 1 week a month where I can't do a thing and I am laid out in bed or on the sofa listening to podcasts, watching videos, and sometimes just like staring at the wall because I'm in pain. And then the rest of the time is somewhere in between those two. So that's usually when I can handle like maybe an hour or 2 work a day, but I never do that. I do a half day and then I crash, and then the following day I need to rest. So I'm often like alternating between these light work days and rest days. So in total, that means that my like functional ability, like the amount of work I can do, I don't want to use like work as the only metric, but like the amount of activities I can do are about like a quarter of my healthy state, and that is with basically all the domestic work taken away from me. My partner does, my fiance, we got engaged last year. I proposed last summer. It was magical. Anyway, B does like all of the shopping, almost all of the cooking, all of the dog care. Basically, he does almost everything, so I can use the energy I do have as effectively as possible. ME/CFS also goes hand in hand with post-exertional malaise. So if you overexert yourself, you experience a few days or weeks of worse symptoms as you recover from that. I do crash when I overexert myself. Like taking the dogs to the park will be my whole day's worth of energy, and I'll have to rest after that. But it's also, you know, social exertion, it is mental stimulation, it is sensory experience. All of those can lead to a crash, and I have particularly acute crashes where I can go from being you know, totally with it and talking to you, and within like 30 seconds, a minute, I can be like a zombie. Like so I'm like almost stuttering just talking about it, and the sun's gone in because it knows how distressing this can be, but like my body just shuts down and my brain shuts down and I can't move, or I feel like I can think properly, but I usually can't communicate very well. That's very distressing, and the threshold where that happens is not improved at all. But I think I'm much better at managing it. I'm much better at like noticing when one of these crashes is going to come on, or like recognizing what would be too much stimulation for me and just cutting myself off much earlier. But there are some things in life that I don't want to hold myself back from doing. So, you know, big group dinners and weddings, I don't think I've been to a single one of them since I first got sick where I didn't end up crashing at the end and needing to be like carried out, basically. I've made a few videos on this channel talking about my long COVID experiences before, and I will be referring to them. One particular symptom I have that's also quite rare is difficulty with my vision. So if I'm in a complex visual environment, like there's a lot of color and pattern or text, it can scramble my brain really quickly. And that is something I also said in my last video has been slowly improving, and it definitely is improving, but I still have the same issues with not being able to handle much like screen time or stimulating environments. It's less now about having a real sensitivity to that visual stimulation, but it's more like the cognitive effort it takes for me to pass text exhausts me really quickly. So now I theoretically could read, like my eyes would be okay with like a page of a novel, but I think getting like 10 pages in, I would be like, I'm exhausted, and that's like the end of my energy for the day. So yeah, this was originally a book review channel. I still listen to audiobooks and stuff, but getting back to full reading, it's not something worth me prioritizing right now with the energy I have. I do also want to flag that a very common thing to have alongside ME/CFS and long COVID is a high sensitivity to foods, to stuff like laundry detergent, to smells, and that's called mast cell activation syndrome. I have not had any issues with that, thankfully. I cannot imagine what it would be like to have to go through this while only being able to eat like 4 things because everything else doesn't agree with you. Yeah, I'm very thankful that my gut is behaving nicely. I have to keep flicking the auto exposure. I've actually filmed this entire video before, and the light was too bad that I wanted to refilm it, and the light is also being shitty today. Next, an update on my official medical help. So I was part of our local post-COVID clinic. I really wanted to leave it and join the ME clinic instead because I thought it was better resourced and more specialized. I did finally manage to get that to happen last year, and I had an appointment with them over the summer, and they're basically like, we can't offer you any treatment. They were offering the same thing as a post-COVID clinic, which are fatigue management sessions, which I've already done a bunch of, but they did diagnose me, which is a really good thing to have on the medical record. I do actually have a fatigue management session with them next week, so they do provide ongoing support, but there's nothing like specific they can do for me. I was also waiting on a follow-up from a cardiologist about treating my POTS symptoms, and I got a call from them last summer, and they basically said because of my age and my sex, I don't know whether it's like hormone influenced, that they would not prescribe me anything to treat my POTS symptoms. I think it was because of the side effects, and also that they could increase your risk of heart issues in later life. I don't know. He seemed very sure that it wouldn't be worth it for me, given the severity of my symptoms and the fact that like my ME wasn't going to disappear because my heart was a bit better. So those are all of the official medical routes exhausted. Now I'm going to talk about treatments I've tried. So things I have tried in the past and described in previous videos that didn't help me, or like didn't significantly improve my symptoms, were fasting, both 72-hour and intermittent. I tried the autoimmune protocol diet. I've tried SSRIs. I've tried beta blockers. I've tried some supplements, and now we're on to the main thing I want to talk about in this video, which is the thing that I think has moved the dial for me, which is nicotine. Disclaimer, not a medical doctor. Talk to your medical practitioners before you embark on something like this. I just want to share my experience with this treatment. So I just started this when I posted my last video. I talked about some of the science of it over there, but basically, it's unknown why it helps, but some people see a big improvement using nicotine patches. It's also non-addictive and very safe to use for the vast majority of people. If you'd like more information on safety and suggested protocols, I will leave a link to the nicotine test, which is a fantastic patient-led study, and their private Facebook group was invaluable to me as I went through this process. During my experiments with nicotine, I kept a spreadsheet where I saved how much nicotine I was having each each day, and also where I felt I was at on that Action for ME functional ability scale. So I have a lot of data to share with you. I'll also leave a link to a template of that spreadsheet down below if you want to do something similar. The suggested approach is that you start with a really small amount of nicotine and like build it up slowly and come back down and take a break and reassess how it's making you feel. So I started with, I think, 3.5 milligrams, which is half of the lowest dose widely available patch, and I didn't see any improvement in my first round. I started out when I was going through a really big crash. It was pretty horrendous. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I was on my first break between rounds, and then suddenly I had a day where I could just be a human in the world. It was incredible. It was the first day in 2 years where I'd felt human, which was insane. And over my next like 2 rounds, I just kept going up and not having these huge crashes. I honestly thought it was an absolute miracle. But you know, as time went on, it sort of dipped a little bit, and I noticed that if I have a longer round, I can start to feel the waning effectiveness. And I'm also like obviously pushing myself further when I feel like I can suddenly do stuff. I want to take advantage of that, so then I do commensurately crash and stuff. But yeah, it has been incredible. I spent basically all of 2024 doing these various rounds of nicotine, experimenting with like where I put it on my body and like if I take it off at night and that kind of thing. And I felt like I got a lot of effectiveness out of it, to the point where this year I've decided to not log this data at all. But I've only used nicotine for like a few days. So it's now a tool in my toolbox that I can use specifically to boost myself out of crashes, or like if I have like a cold or the flu or something that will make my fatigue much worse. So being able to use nicotine patches to boost my energy levels when I do feel terrible is just wonderful. I'm starting to feel a little off, so I'm going to pause this and have some food, and hopefully we'll be back with you later. Hello, I needed more of a rest. I needed a big nap, so I come back to you a few days later. Next up, I want to talk about brain retraining, which is a very controversial topic. If you look up brain retraining, you'll find a lot of very expensive courses and people saying that it absolutely cured them. Meanwhile, a lot of the ME/CFS community think that it's all rubbish, and that if you were cured by brain retraining, you never had ME/CFS in the first place. The theory is that chronic fatigue and pain-related illnesses like fibromyalgia are caused by a dysregulated nervous system rather than any other physiological damage. By controlling your reactions to physical symptoms like tachycardia, you can reprogram your nervous system's responses and slow down that overactive cycle. And I can see how this would be absolutely revolutionary in people that haven't done a lot of cognitive behavioural therapy and aren't used to questioning their own thoughts. For example, the British comedian Miranda Hart released a memoir recently called I Haven't Been Entirely Honest With You, about her struggles with ME/CFS, and she went full send on brain retraining as the solution to her problems, and it's been very effective. By the way, that book was so wonderful to read. I mean, I listened to it. I didn't read it with my eyes, but I listened to it, and then I just started listening to it immediately again, because like having someone explain their experiences with symptoms that you've been experiencing, it's just so validating. The actual techniques of brain retraining are to limit catastrophization, to notice your reactions to your physical symptoms and redirect them. And there's also a lot of small breathing and massage techniques to help relax the nervous system. I've had plenty of private talk therapy and CBT through the Long COVID clinic, so I think I'm pretty good at not catastrophizing at this point, but it did help me in a number of ways. Firstly, I realized that I did a lot of trying to analyze how I feel at any given moment or any given day, and that kind of obsessive thought cycle is just not very productive. So I stopped logging like how I feel every single day for the nicotine test thing, and I now am trying to approach like gentle reflection upon how I'm feeling instead of like really tensely trying to log and analyze how I feel. Another thing that made me reconsider is my reliance on walking sticks. I've been using walking sticks for almost all of my illness. At points I found them really helpful. But now I realise that I don't use a walking stick inside my house at all. I might have to pull myself up the stairs, but like I can walk around my house without a walking stick. And yet as soon as I leave my front door, I'm like, I need my walking stick, and I feel really strange without one. All this brain retraining research has made me like reflect on my patterns, and that was one that I thought was really sticky because like I obviously don't physically need it every time I leave the house. Like there might be times I do need it, but I do definitely use it as a crutch. So I basically started experimenting with not using it outside, like having it folded up in my coat. So I'd still bring a fold up walking stick if I have one of those really cute crashes. I definitely need it, but it was just very freeing to like walk around and being like, oh, I can walk. And you know, there are days where I do really feel like I need a walking stick, and I realized that those days I shouldn't be walking. Like if I need a walking stick to physically move at all, then walking's only going to be damaging for me. But if I feel confident enough to go out without a walking stick or to just bring it with me in my bag or whatever, then walking will probably be good for me. So brain retraining is not a cure for me, but I think a lot of its techniques are helpful. I refuse to spend lots of money on a course and someone telling me that I will be cured. There's also a very toxic cycle in there of like blaming the patient if they're not cured. You know, like you haven't tried hard enough, you're not thinking hard enough. I do think that even if these techniques are very useful to a lot of people, they can just like increase the stigma of having chronic fatigue. So that's obviously very toxic and bad. But once you've tried out all of the traditional treatments that are offered, it's worth considering psychological factors. Between filming the first part of this video and now, I've had that fatigue management appointment with the ME clinic, and it was really interesting how much she mentioned the psychological factors and underlying stress of these activities that you're struggling to do. So I was talking about taking my dogs to the park, which I don't do very often because I find it really exhausting, obviously, and it's not like a good use of my energy, but I have to do it when my partner is away, like maybe he's in London for the day for work or something. So basically most of the time that I'm taking the dogs to the park is because I need to, and I don't have that physical support nearby, which is obviously a much more stressful thing. So if I can get myself used to taking the dogs out when I do have, you know, be at home nearby, and when I don't have to like concentrate all of my entire day's energy on this thing because no one else is here to do it, that actually would probably be a healthier thing for me to establish patterns of taking the dogs out without that underlying stress, and could improve it overall. So that's my experiences of brain retraining and a more psychological side of this illness. Something I thought was really interesting about having gone through the nicotine thing and having had these periods of time where I feel really well, like genuinely like well, it's kind of given me the confidence to be like, oh, this is something solvable. It's not like every cell in my body is like really struggling with this thing that is totally incurable, because I have had days where I felt really good. So that has also, you know, given me the confidence to believe that some of these like psychological interventions can really help me. A couple of other things that I found helpful in the last year or so. I've talked before about cold exposure. I find when I get into the sea, it feels really good, and I have like a cold plunge set up at home, which is inactive at the moment, but that's a whole other story. I really love getting into the sea. It makes me feel really good in the moment, makes me feel good the rest of the day. And I decided to start having cold showers, and I'm now like the smuggest person in the world. The idea of just like walking into a cold shower is like absolutely repellent to me. Like I would never be able to convince myself to do that. So what I do instead is I have like a normal hot shower, and then I just like turn it cold for like 30 seconds or a minute afterwards, and it feels so good. It feels so good while it's happening. I really feel like it makes me feel good for the following few hours. The thing that's great about my technique is that you can really ease yourself into it. You know, you can go a little bit colder each day, you can stay in there a bit longer. And from the research I've done, going from a hot shower to a cold shower has basically the same effects on your body as going from nothing to a cold shower. It's just like a much more pleasant experience. So yeah, really recommend trying that. Other things I've noticed help, and this is so boring, but like eating healthily, having 3 full meals a day and having a more structured routine makes me feel better. I've learned that I just feel terrible in the mornings. If I have to get up and go somewhere, like a couple times I've had to drive to the vet for like a 9 o'clock appointment, I then crash really hard for the rest of the day. So instead I wake up at 9:30, B brings me a cup of tea in bed, I get out of bed, maybe like 11, and then I can have a productive afternoon. I used to be a real morning person. I love taking advantage of those morning hours, but my body doesn't like that now. And I've learned that. I've had this for more than 1,000 days now. And I'm very thankful for the intuition that is built up around stuff like my routine and how much I can push myself. And it's so funny thinking back to like being really, data analytical at the start, having 3 months of information and being like, what can I figure out from this? Like, what do I need to do differently? What can I try?
My camera cut out there for a minute, but I was basically saying there is no replacement for time when it comes to developing your intuition. And I was very impatient at the start, like gathering all this data and trying to figure out these patterns from just like 3 months of information, like was not going to be enough for me to learn things. But with 3 years of information, I'm getting a lot better at understanding what my body needs and what my body can handle.
I'm learning to really trust and value my intuition. And, even if my symptoms don't improve, I know that my intuition and my understanding of my own body is only going to grow. And that is a really wonderful feeling. Okay, let's talk about work and money. So when my last video came to you, my ombudsman complaint had just been denied. So that was me complaining about not receiving the income protection insurance that I thought I was entitled to from my company. At that time, I wasn't sure what was happening with my job, but they wanted me to go back. And I did try last year over like June, July. I tried a very, very slow phased return, but then I felt really awful all August, and I was like, it's just not worth it. So as of this month, I'm no longer working there, and I've decided to retire from engineering entirely. Making that decision's been really sad, but it's been even sadder, like expecting that I'm going to be well enough to return to work and, wanting to do the kind of work that I was doing. I've been making websites since I was like 11 and I absolutely love it. I've been really proud of work I've done, but my body is just not compatible with that kind of work at the moment. And I think like a clean break of I'm just not going to attempt to do this anymore in a professional context. Never say never. If I improve a lot or if I find that I literally can't make money any other way, so I need to, do it even if I can only do like 1 day a week, I might come back to it. So yeah, I'm kind of in mourning about my software engineering career, but that also leaves room to exciting things I get to share, which is my new channel, Studio Astrig. In my last video, I talked a lot about my issues with builders stealing loads of money from me. But I'm now in the house that we built. Well, not we built, we renovated. Yeah, we moved in a year ago and I love this house so much. I mentioned before that I'd love to start a DIY YouTube channel, and now I'm just going for it. I'm pursuing that. That's going to be my new thing, hopefully my new career, which is, a lot of pressure, but it's going to be really fun because I have like a design background. I know a lot about design, but I also love learning new practical skills. And then I also get the added element of like doing that all with the disability and the accessibility considerations, the energy considerations. I think that's an interesting angle for a YouTube channel. I should be launching it like the day this video comes out, so you can go check out that channel. I've launched with 2 videos. One is making these cupboards, and the other is making that door. Can you see why I set up this angle now? I've also set up a Patreon for the channel. There's this really cool after show perk, and I'm hoping to get enough money to hire an editor as soon as possible, because that's the thing that is slowing me down more than anything else at the moment, is the cognitive effort to edit the videos. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about that, and I hope you like it, and please check it out and send it to everyone you know. I don't want to be dramatic, but I honestly don't know what kind of work I could do that has the flexibility I need for like when I have bad days, that doesn't require me to be looking at a computer all the time, and also that allows me to like bail out. I'm sure there are some like call center jobs that I could do part-time, but I couldn't just like bail in a second if I feel bad. So like the flexibility of making videos, running a YouTube channel, I think is the right option for me. Okay, last couple of things. Rounding up a few other kind of admin-y things. I still have a blue badge, a disabled parking badge. I love it. I couldn't live without it. It makes life so much easier for me. I don't think I'd be able to socialize outside my house without it. So very thankful for that. I also have an access card, which is a scheme to sort of like prove you're disabled. But my access card has a +1 on it, which means I require a carer. And that means I can usually get a free +1 ticket to a lot of events, theatre, comedy. Most places will allow you to have a free carer ticket. So that makes a lot of events effectively half price for me to go with B. And it also compensates for the fact that I don't receive personal independence payments. You may have seen this in the news recently. They are absolutely slashing PIP. I applied for it a year and a half ago. I didn't get it. I appealed it, but then I didn't do the proper appeal thing because I just was feeling bad and didn't have the time. I need to reapply, and I will reapply before it gets much harder in October. But I should be entitled to it with the effect my disability has on my life, and yet it's really hard to get. So just a reminder, if you've seen any of that on the news, politicians saying that people just stealing off the state, getting all of these disability benefits, it's already really hard to get in the first place. So it makes me really angry, but let's move on. The final thing I wanted to talk about was just a general how I'm feeling, because in many ways I feel quite in control of my life and happy, but I'm also really ambitious, and adjusting my expectations for what my life is going to be has been really, really hard. You think that would get easier over time, but it actually gets harder, because the distance between where my life would be if I wasn't sick and my life as it is, that's just becoming greater and greater as those paths diverge. Yeah, it's really sad. We're actually just talking about this yesterday, and that we would be married and probably have a child by now if I hadn't got sick. We're just so far away from that. But my health as it is, I don't think I would be a good mother. And we don't have the support system, either practical, financial, to give me the confidence to have children at this point. It's really shitty. My friends have started having kids, and it's just gutting to not be able to experience that in my life right now. We're still planning on trying for kids. It's just how much time we wait to see if I get much better and whether that's worth it. And those are just very annoying calculations to make. I often think about this quote. I do not remember where I heard it. I'm sorry, I'll try and find the source. That having ME/CFS is unlearning how to be human. Oof, that hits really hard, because so much of the time what you're told will make you feel better, when you have a physical illness or a mental illness, is connection, seeing friends, talking to friends, going outside, getting some fresh air, going on a walk. These are all things that are meant to make you feel better, and they can actively make you worse if you have ME/CFS. For your own health, you have to limit the amount of socializing you do. You have to limit the amount of connection you have, because it can just be overstimulating. And that's just really shitty. Sometimes when I'm feeling really down about this, it kind of helps to realize just how inhumane this illness is. And, there's no point in making a hierarchy of different illnesses, but this, the downsides are really bad. They're really, really bad. So if you're struggling with this, just know that I get you. And it sucks, and it really sucks. It's all right for you to be very aware that it sucks. And I live in this duality of absolutely hating it and really hating how it's affected my life. And, trying to accept and move on and take advantage. And, it's always a line that we have to straddle, but it's shitty either way. Okay, I'm going to stop babbling and go and have a lie down again. Thank you for watching. I know that a lot of you suffer with this as well, and I'd love to hear updates on your journeys in the comment section. Thanks a lot. Bye.